I put this bow together yesterday, and today I thought it would be fun, as I'm starting to shoot it a little bit, to talk about how I set this up and why I set it up the way that I did. And I'm going to call this my idiot-proof bow setup, because during the moment of truth, sometimes I turn into an idiot. So making the bow as simple as possible with the least number of things that can go wrong, both in the setup with the actual parts that you use and even the way that you use the bow. Like we'll start going through it, and that'll help you to understand what I'm talking about. So anyway, this episode of the setup is all going to be about how to put together the most idiot-proof bow. Let's start with the bow itself. And the reason I'm building a new bow is, this is the RX9 from Hoyt, RX9 Ultra. And I've got an RX9 Ultra, but the one I've got is an 80-pound bow. And, I hate to say this because my pride really is fighting these words as they come out of my mouth, but 80 pounds is getting to be too much for me now. So this one is 75. That is what really caused this whole project to get started. I've got to have a new bow. I've got to have one with lower draw weight. That's in itself a factor in being idiot-proof. Because if you can't draw the bow back comfortably and shoot it accurately, that's not a good bow for any situation. So the heavier the draw weight gets, your muscles get cold, maybe you're out of shape a little bit because you're not keeping up your shooting during the season. The draw weight can be a little bit too much, and that's what was happening to me. So step number one, you got to have a bow that's comfortably within your ability to draw. So obviously you want a bow that's very reliable. An idiot-proof bow has to be one that doesn't fail for any reason. These Hoyt bows have been awesome. I recently laid out in the floor of my shop almost 20 years worth of Hoyt bows that I've owned. And I think we might be missing 3 of them in there that I gave away. I know I gave away the Alpha Max, which I wish I still had that, because when Hoyt went from I was shooting the Ultra Tech, if you remember that bow. Anyway, we could go really off course on this conversation because bow designs have changed so much. But the Alpha Max was the first bow that Hoyt made that was really what I would say the modern design. And that bow, I shot that bow so well and shot a lot of animals with it. And then I gave it to Aaron Warburton, and he shot it for a number of years. And then he ended up, I think he sold that bow somewhere down the line, but that was a great bow. But before that was the Ultra Tech. And I remember one time telling somebody, we were talking at one of the ATA shows about bows and how many animals we'd killed with them or whatever. And some guy said, that bow over there has killed more deer than Winter. And I thought, I've got one of those. I think that Ultra Tech, if I had to guess conservatively, I'd say I've killed 200 deer with that Ultra Tech. And I shot that thing religiously until that Alpha Max came out. But anyway, we're going way back in the history here. But the point is, I've been a Hoyt lover for a long time. In the late 90s, I'm going to continue down my rabbit hole here. In the late 90s, one season, I killed 7 big game animals with 7 different brands of bows, 7 different bow manufacturers' bows. And after that is when I settled in on the Hoyt. Now we need to start talking about this bow and how I set it up. That's enough history for now. But anyway, you can see a pile of bows that I've shot over the years from Hoyt. And one of the things that I would say, I'm not sure 100% if it's the right direction that I've gone or not. Obviously I've changed to the string knocking loop, of hooking my release aid directly to the loop. And this one I haven't shot it in yet, so it's still a little bit on the short end. But prior to that, I always shot by attaching the release to the string. And then I had a setup that was actually fairly forgiving, even though a lot of people say that's not a very accurate way to shoot a bow. I did well shooting that way, and I liked it because there was just one less thing to go wrong. When it was time to hook up, I didn't have to look down to snag the loop, because I could just put the release in my finger, slide it onto the string, close it, slide it up to the arrow, and draw my bow. I didn't have to see it. And that really helped me in some situations when I had to shoot quick. So I'm not even 100% sure that as a pure bow hunter, that the string knocking loop is even the way to go. I'm tempted in some future build to make one again where I attach my release directly to the string. And everybody would laugh at me, but old school sometimes is still the best school. I remember there was, I was in a hunting camp one time with Joel Maxfield from Matthews, and we were talking about it, and Joel was one of the top people in the hunting industry at that time, and a really good target shooter. But he had, when he set up his hunting bows, he set them up to attach directly to the string. And his target bows he set up, or his competition bows, he attached through the loop. So anyway, there's something to be said for that, but I'm gonna move on. It's always fun to go back and reminisce and talk about the evolution of the Idiotproof bow. Let's look at some other major factors on this bow. I think another concession that I've made, throughout time is the sight. A true Idiotproof bow doesn't have very many sight pins. And I could, I'm sure, set this is the exact lengths, which is a movable pin sight. You can roll it up and down and set it for the exact distance of the shot if you want to. I've got 5 pins on there, so I can lock it in and leave it with the top pin at 20, and then just use it 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. I'm not gonna take a 60-yard shot typically unless the animal maybe is a little bit, I've already hit it, it's wounded, or I might practice at 60. So having that 60-yard pin does serve some purpose. But I could do the same thing with just setting the single pin and not having 5 on there at, say, 25 yards. So a true Idiotproof bow probably has 1 pin set at 25 yards. And then that's gonna be really accurate or dead on vital zone for a whitetail, anywhere from, let's say, 14 up to almost 35 yards, where you don't have to compensate with your aim point. You gotta aim a little bit low, less than 15 with a 25-yard pin, and obviously you gotta aim a little bit high past about 32 or 33 yards with a 25-yard pin to hit the kill zone. But that gives you a lot of flexibility. So if you're doing a single pin, probably the most Idiotproof way to set it up is set it for 25 yards. I like a fairly big peep. This one is a 1/4 inch. Now, if I was setting this bow up strictly for target shooting or competition, it would be a completely different bow. This is an Idiotproof whitetail hunting bow. Even if I was setting it up, let's say, for a mule deer hunt or a pronghorn hunt out west, it would probably look different, because accuracy becomes more critical on some of those situations, because the minute amount of inaccuracy is going to result in a lot bigger miss at longer distances, whether you're competing or hunting game at longer distances. But whitetail hunting is really not much past 30 yards in most cases. Very rarely, if you set up correctly in the woods, are you going to get much more than a 30-yard shot. Once in a while. I mean, I've killed a few deer at 40 and maybe 1 or 2 past that, but I've killed tons of them at 25 and less. So really, getting a whitetail on the ground is more about making good decisions during the moment of truth and the timing of the shot, less so than the pure accuracy of your shooting ability or the pure accuracy of your bow. So you want a simple bow that's just, get away from anything that can go wrong. Peep sight, 1/4 inch. It's a little bit big if you're trying to be a precision target shooter, but it allows me to see a pretty good sized field of view when I'm at full draw aiming through that peep. I can see the deer coming into my shooting lane, or maybe I've got a really small hole that I need to shoot through. Timing becomes more critical than just pinpoint accuracy. So having a larger field of view really helps. It also lets more light in during the moment of truth if you're hunting, evenings or mornings, when the light is low. Then in order to compensate for the fact that it's big, I don't center the individual pins. I center the sight ring, the guard, the sight guard. So having a round sight guard that fits pretty much, line on line inside my peep at full draw allows me to maintain a lot of that same level of precision and have that larger field of view. So that makes for, an Idiotproof setup too. I just see better. I can time my shots better. The rest is a full capture rest. When it's up at full draw, the arrow can't bounce out of there. If the arrow can't ever be anywhere but at the bottom of the plunger, when you're at full draw, that eliminates another variable. So although most bows are like that now, having a full capture rest is another big step towards being Idiotproof. You won't see a bow sling, like a wrist sling. And again, maybe in competitive shooting I would use one, but one of the reasons I like the Hoyt so well is I do have a small throat on the grip. I don't have to have a death grip on the bow to keep it from jumping out of my hand at the shot if I make a surprise release. And that's what the sling is supposed to do. It's supposed to keep you from losing the bow when you shoot. Well, the design of the bows have changed a lot too, because now the recoil is up and down and not forward, because the limbs are more parallel now. So you don't get as much forward jump on the bow. You don't get as much tendency of the bow to leap out of your hand. But also, I like the smaller throat, because I can make a real light circle with my fingers on the grip, and I can still shoot a surprise shot. Don't have to worry about catching it and closing my hand on it. I don't want to have to fish my hand up in there and get around the grip. I want to just be able to grab the bow. You might have to shoot quick. You don't know. I mean, I've had deer that I've killed where I had very few, just a few seconds to go from seeing them to hitting full draw and making the shot. You don't want to have some kind of a speed bump, you know, in the process of being quick through the shot. So that's another one. You'll notice a quiver that, and this is the funny one, you don't see my nocks sticking out past the end of the bow. Like, let's say I set the bow down at the base of the tree and I'm going to pull it up on the rope. I get it up into the tree. I don't want to have dirt in my nocks. When this thing is sitting on the ground, the ends of my arrows need to be protected by the bow. So having a quiver that's adjustable so you can keep the end of your arrows from overlapping the end of your bow is definitely one more step toward making it idiot proof. And you may laugh, but a friend of mine, Larry Zock, missed a really big deer one time because of that exact reason. He had dirt in his nocks, you know, pulled it up, put it on the string, didn't realize it. When he went to draw back the bow at full draw, it pinched. You know, the string gets a little bit narrower in the throat of the nock. It pinched the arrow out and it fell off his bow and clattered onto his tree stand and bounced onto the ground, and the deer ran off. So it can happen. It's just, when that happened to Larry, I thought, well, I'm never gonna let that happen to me. So anyway, that's why my quiver is set up the way it is. Let's look at another thing is even the broadheads that I shoot. It's idiot proof for me to eliminate variables that can affect my accuracy. This is a B3 broadhead, a newer one from them that opens from the back forward. So it's just a different design. It's a mechanical, obviously. I'll just set that aside. And here's one that they make, just a really small fixed blade broadhead. And I really like these. This one's called the Destruct 3. And I love this one. It's you know, it's really rugged, penetrates well, super accurate. And the reason I like, you know, picking a broadhead that's this forgiving is because you don't know what the situation's going to be when you hit full draw. It might be a crosswind, you know, you might make a rough release, you may not get perfect arrow flight. You don't want to have the whole season hinge on, you know, factors like that. You want to have enough forgiveness in your arrow setup and in your broadhead that you're going to be accurate even if you're not at your best. Everybody says, well, your bow should be better, or you should be a better shot. Well, yeah, there's a lot of things that I should be that I'm not. You know, I don't have it all at my disposal when the buck I've been hunting for 2 years is 25 yards away and coming in. I'm just happy to be able to function well enough to get my bow back and pick a spot to shoot at. So that's what the idiot proof bow is all about. And having a broadhead that goes along with that, that's definitely an asset and part of my system. I'm getting pretty close to the end here. Mercifully, right? I don't have a stabilizer on here, and I should. Again, if I was competing or making long range shots, I would, because that would allow me to hold the bow more stable at full draw, because you got more inertia further out away from your hand. But I don't like having one more thing that snags in the trees or bumps through the brush. And you know, I want my bow to be as compact and within as small of a package as possible. So that's why I don't have a stabilizer or more. Some people have back stabilizers, and all that stuff definitely makes them more accurate, but they're gonna take a 15-yard shot, you know, at the end of the day, more than likely. So, you know, you just don't need all that stuff. I agree, it makes you more accurate, but at what cost? Like, what do you give up in the functionality or the usability of the bow? Just the ease of use, throwing it in the back of your truck. I don't want to throw my bow in the back of my truck if I got a whole bunch of stuff on it. You know, anyway, my point is, the less stuff that can go wrong, the better. That pretty much takes you through it. You know, I'm excited about this new bow. You know, it's always fun to get a new one. It's not any different than the one I had before. It's just easier to pull back. Which, gosh, you know, someday I'm going to do an episode on the exercises that I do to try to maintain my ability to draw slightly heavier draw weight. And I do think there's an advantage to shooting a little bit heavier, but you know, that's something for another day. Well, I appreciate you joining me. Hopefully you pulled something from that long dialogue of history lessons from Bill Winke's younger days. We'll see you back here again soon for another episode of The Setup. Remember to always dream big.